So one thing, thank you so much for everybody who is coming. I wanted to give you a little bit of information with respect to what we have been doing in this COVID environment. I found it interesting, Jeremy, that hearing the responses to the second vaccine, for me, kind of like my body was trying to throw stuff at me. It's, let's do chills, let's do this, interesting experience. So in this kind of hectic, crazy times, I thank you for being here. What Kendra and I have been doing is interviewing wonderful center directors. It has been a really great experience for me. And essentially what we did is envision almost every week in the fall and in the spring, we interviewed and just, met with center directors, and we recorded all those meetings. I encourage you for the fall to review the podcast. That was a compilation of center directors and what the centers did. So we did that, and our goal is to be able to, with respect to service learning coming up, hopefully in the fall, we get to start going full-fledged, for professors who are interested, have them bring us an idea and be able to say, hey, we got this, this, and this might work for you. Okay, so we've been doing that legwork, and I hope to continue. That's one positive outcome of this Zoom and remote situation, and that we could get together with so many individuals. We have also streamlined the process with respect to service learning. So we still ask for a proposal. We no longer ask for a syllabus. We're basically, what do you want to do? What's your ideas? Let's get you hooked up. Let's get you talking with a community partner to see where we can go. And also, and you know this, but as a reminder, my end is looking at the course and brainstorming with student learning outcomes and making sure that service learning is really integrated in the course. Kendra really does the heavy lifting. I'm not going to say a lot, she does the heavy lifting because she's the individual who gets out there and makes those initial connections. Once the service learning occurs, checking in with our community partners, making sure everything is going well. So we have that set up for you, and again, trying to streamline the process. So with the center directors, and again, thank you so much for being with us today. Thrilled. I remember our interview, and it was wonderful. I can't wait to have you share with this group here and with the recording, other individuals as well. But basically what we did, and I'll kind of start the questions with this same kind of idea. We asked each center, after a discussion of, general purpose of the center, general needs, we asked them basically to envision or about their organization and the organization's missions and goals, some initiatives that the organization is taking, and also in the context of service learning. So with respect to those missions and goals, the question was, how can Xavier students help you to fulfill these goals? Help satisfy, meet your clients' needs. And we also kind of had organizations think forward to the fall of what kind of cooperative agreements, what kind of work we could do together. So with the panel, I actually presented, I'm going to do this to everybody in chat. Make sure I got all of them. Yes, I do. So as far as opening up, did it? Thank you. Wait, sorry. As far as opening up, there we go. Some questions, Robin, if you could address regarding Lift Louisiana, the organization's missions and goals, again, the initiatives with students, how we can become involved, and current or past success would be awesome if you could speak to that for a second.
Okay. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Robin Barber. I am the statewide outreach and engagement coordinator for Lift Louisiana. Lift Louisiana is a reproductive rights organization, and our mission is to educate, advocate, and litigate for policy changes for women and families to help improve their quality of life in the state of Louisiana. also to help improve the quality of life in their reproductive health fields in the state of Louisiana and in their communities. LIFT Louisiana started in 2013. I have been on board now for 4.5 years as a state outreach engagement and community outreach director. And I just want to say thank you for having me on the panel. We look forward to partnering with a lot of different colleges across the state of Louisiana so that we can get young people involved in advocacy work that needs to be done in the state of Louisiana. Would you like me now to talk about some of our initiatives?
Yes, Bach, Lisa, I don't mean to jump in here, but Bach raised his hand. Bach, do you have a question? No, accidental hand raise. Go for it, Robin.
Okay. One of the more recent successes that LIFT had was with the period equality campaign, period equity campaign. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. And that was to eliminate what's called the pink tax on feminine hygiene products, diapers, etc. We did a proposal to the city council along with Helena Moreno, and she was able, and it passed unanimously, to eliminate the 2.5% tax on these hygiene projects because it provides an undue burden on women and families in the state of Louisiana. The campaign was successful. City of New Orleans, like I said, passed it unanimously last year, and it has now moved on to Baton Rouge, where it's passed, and Shreveport. So now we're working to make this a statewide initiative, but LIFT Louisiana is pretty proud about that. And we were able to achieve that last year. As a matter of fact, I gave the presentation to the New Orleans City Council, and it, like I said, overwhelming support. So we hope that this initiative will, take up wings, and we can get this passed statewide. One of the programs that I am most proud of is a program we started back in 2016, where we partner with 5 other community advocacy organizations that also provide healthcare and reproductive healthcare in the state of Louisiana, and medical professionals across the state to help train students to advocate for themselves early in their career and for their patients. It's called Power of the Provider. We do it annually. It's a 2-day course, but unfortunately this year, we are trying to get it started for the fall. Unfortunately, because of COVID, if restrictions haven't been lifted by the fall, we'll have to do it virtually. So it will be a 1-day training session. We hope to provide this year service learning credits for students who get involved in the training. My concern was over the past 4 years that we've had Power of the Provider, we have not seen a lot of minority students get involved. We've seen a lot of students from Tulane, a lot of students from LSU. So this year, my focus is to make sure we have students of color involved in this training, particularly nursing students, pharmacy students, because all of those types of students, when they mature in their careers, will be able to advocate for their patients and themselves. And so it's a wonderful training. We do message training. We do a jog back, if you will, on the history of reproductive justice, health, and rights in the state of Louisiana and the organizations that are involved in it. And the students have taken to it really, really well. As a matter of fact, we have support from LSU and from Tulane Medical School that have been providing support for us to put these trainings on. And so again, we hope to be able to put it on in the fall, but we'll have to do it virtually. And that's something that perhaps Xavier students could get involved in and benefit from too. So that's a little bit about Lift Louisiana. I hope I've answered all of your questions. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Doing my mute thing. So wonderful, and I know of these two initiatives. One of the things that I think that faculty might be interested in is what service learning students will actually do, what they will see via their interaction, for instance, in the power of the provider. So we have the training program, but then, you know, and that's important in and of itself. So don't get me wrong the way I, just said that. But when you get feet on the ground, how would you envision student involvement? And that'll help faculty see that mesh between their course and see that link with the student learning outcomes.
Well, they will then be ambassadors / people to advocate for how policy needs to change in the state of Louisiana about reproductive health care and reproductive rights for women and families in the state of Louisiana. We need young voices. We need more voices. And with them having going through this particular training, not only would they be able to advocate for policy changes, but when action is needed, these students can then go with us during the legislative session to Baton Rouge to actually testify how their work can help and what they see is needed and why legislation that we might be backing is important to move the needle forward on reproductive health care in the state of Louisiana. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So actually, another question that I have.
Also too,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. And then also too, for example, nursing students and pharmacy students, when they're into their careers, if there are questions, say like if a woman has, questions about her menstrual cycle or some changes that she's having or some difficulties she's having, these particular students now in their career as nurses or pharmacy students or pharmacologists can explain why certain medication might be given or what they need to do, maybe to change their lifestyle or diet or whatever is surrounding their particular issue they might have. They're just being great advocates in the field that we need to try to improve in the state of Louisiana. I mean, Louisiana, I don't have to tell you guys, I'm preaching to the choir. We ranked 50th in everything. Thank God for Mississippi, in some instances, because, they're neck and neck with us. But, when you talk about hypertension, diabetes, particularly in Black and Brown communities, here's an opportunity to help educate and change some of these outcomes. And then, the chance for women to actually make the choices they need to make, informed choices about what's right for their bodies, their families, and their communities. So, we applaud and welcome all advocates to the field. And reaching out to as many college campuses as we possibly can is a win-win, I think, for the state of Louisiana.
Robin, I think you made a great point, though, about there is something particularly powerful about having students of color do this in communities, though, as well. So I hope that we make some connections here. I think also, I was thinking, so first of all, I put in the chat, I don't know if you saw, so we know each other. You came into my human sexuality class. We met at a Jazz at the Park Didn't you come into my hands?
I did when I worked for Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw you, I'm like, wait,
Yes.
I know her. Y'all, we met at Jazz in the Park Music, and then you came in my class a couple of times. So it's so nice to see you again. But I'm thinking like this would be a great project for human sexuality class.
Yes, we did.
For public health. I bet there's different public health classes that this would be good for. Danny, I'm thinking maybe with the legislative part, I don't know if there's some political side. I see you opened your camera. Would you like to say something, Danny?
Yeah, I can see lots of relevance in how that could be incorporated into many of the political science curriculums. Obviously, we ask students to think about transferring classroom lessons to reality. One of the things that I do is I have students create fake interest groups, and this fits in perfectly as, interest group advocacy, advancing the interest of women's health. So these are great points for a political science curriculum.
I also want to add to that. Robin, I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I wanted to just say that we also offer medical Spanish for health professionals. And one of the units that I teach is specifically about reproductive health. And as you spoke, I'm like, oh my God, the students will love to have hands-on experience with people, real people for the community, helping them to make differences and to advocate, especially for the Black and Brown community here in New Orleans. So thank you, appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I am glad that people are seeing potential connections. Kind of makes me feel warm and fuzzy. That's starting to get strange. But we have been, again, meeting with so many community partners this year. And every time I meet with them, I'm like, oh, this would be a great opportunity for our students. It melds well with service learning. There is such a need in the New Orleans community, perhaps now more than ever. And we have so many wonderful organizations doing wonderful things. Again, that's what Kendra and I have been doing this year, is really looking into those needs. But I have additional questions. So I think you kind of answered this. Actually, no, let me ask you another question. So when you talk about faculty and making a decision with whom to partner, and remember that it's service learning, so there should be specific student learning outcomes in the course. This is something that is integrated throughout the semester, hoping for assignments, even if it's a service learning journal, or if it's an application of theory, application of skill set, associated with the course. There's so many ways to do that. But so here's the question. What should a faculty know prior to sending students to partnering with your organization? Is there some, or are there any essential tidbits? Are there things that you're looking for in students, certain skill sets, certain expectations? So we'll see where we go with this. This may be a building question.
Okay, that's an excellent question. Since we've been in this pandemic and lockdown, shutdown, we're particularly interested in upping our social media game. And we really need tech savvy students who can handle the Twitter and all of that, social media, because that's another way of keeping people informed. Gone are the days of the long emails and all of that. Information now goes out on short bursts with catchy titles or maybe even a photo or theme or whatever. And we look for that type of skill set from students to help us stay relevant and current and up to the times and to the task of making sure this issue is in the forefront and the minds of people in the state of Louisiana. Does that answer a question?
Yes, it does. And in fact,
we
one
need
thing
tech-savvy students. Yeah.
Don't we all? Sorry, except for I do too. I'll speak for myself. So I'm wondering along those lines.
Professional writing. I'm sorry, the professional writing aspect is good. Also critical, because then, students can then help us craft, if we got to do a letter to an editor, or if we need to do a campaign letter to support blah, 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 or a letter to a legislator. These are all different tasks that we would give to students from that come in as a part of service learning. So there's a lot to do. There is a lot to do. So we would welcome that opportunity for them.
And it's a great example of the variety of need, the potential for matches for a variety of courses. And
I see someone highlighted Spanish writing proficiency too. Absolutely, because whatever materials we put out, we want to make sure that they are also in English and in Spanish. And then when we get the proficiency to be able to translate them into other languages, we can do that too. But right now we know that the majority of the materials that we use, we'd like to provide also in Spanish. So yeah, that's critical too. Absolutely.
So this is a related question. So we have, the idea of, we got a lot of needs, like there's a lot of potential. If you talk or think of students, and let me take a step back here. When Kendra and I are coordinating service learning courses, it's not necessarily the case that if you have a course of 20, that all of your students will go to the same site. So in many cases, and it's just because of how many students the sites can supervise effectively, basically, and get that quality experience. So in many cases, we would be working with you and maybe 2 sites, maybe 3 sites. It's interesting to get this perspective of, with students that would be coming to your site, what qualities would you be looking for in those students?
Okay, well, as outreach and engagement coordinator, I travel the state, particularly the northern half of the state, the Shreveport, the Bossiers, the Lafayettes, Alexandria, where a lot of our opposition is. So partnering with other organizations that exist there, giving presentations to different organizations to try to build a coalition of unique voices so that we can resolve and pass some new legislation or make some new policy changes surrounding women's health care in this state is critical. And I couldn't take certain students with me, providing that does not upset their schedule and their studies and blah, blah, blah. But that's just one aspect. And then, of course, we have the communications team. Students can work with our communications director. We have fundraising department. We have the fundraising, fund development department, So there are different areas where students can be plugged in. Now, we're not a group of many. We're only 6 in staff, but we do mighty things, okay, and have been doing them since 2014.
So I'm taking notes. As I hear too. So that's my delay. I'm like muting and unmuting. So I have.
Lisa, I'm gonna. While you're taking notes, I'm gonna say, let's. If some of the departments would be really good that aren't represented here, like Mass Comm specifically. Carmen can take her stuff to her department. Jay can take the writing stuff to that department. But make a little note. Let's get in touch with Sharon Roberts and just kind of say, be sure to watch this video, and because I think there'd be some really cool stuff there our Mass Comm when it comes to the social media aspect. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, okay. We're often asked to give radio interviews and, give a statement to the press. And these service learning students can help us with drafting stuff for the newspaper or for a podcast, or for a radio program that we do. So we're asked to do a lot. And the students would definitely be there helping us every step of that way.
Okay. So I think, and
if
this
I
actually
may give a shameless plug, Dr. Linda Blakely is a dear friend of mine.
Mm-hmm. So I have actually one more question, then I'm going to open it up to see what questions we have from attendees. What's nice is these questions seem to be, not that I knew this would happen, but they seem to be leading nicely into one another. And I have to, in all honesty, say I asked my colleagues at the Center for the Advancement of Teaching for advice for these questions. So it's not all me doing this. I can't take the full credit, but so with students, the question that I have is, what networking opportunities would students gain via their interaction with LIFT Louisiana? So this would be while they're engaging in their service learning, and also potential opportunities after the fact. So it's like, what connections might they make?
Okay. Well, LIFT Louisiana is a part of many different coalitions that exist around women's health care in the state of Louisiana. So there are oftentimes students would accompany us to some of these coalition meetings. And that's a great networking opportunity to see who's doing what on the ground in the state of Louisiana. We've got great advocates in Baton Rouge. Of course, we have great advocates here in Louisiana, but across the state broadly. One of the coalitions we're involved in, and there's so many acronyms, and I'm getting old and sometimes I confuse them. LCRF is the Louisiana Coalition for Reproductive Freedom, which has many partners. The Institute for Women and Ethnic Studies, IWES, Planned Parenthood, Women with a Vision. That's just to name a few. There are so many, and so forgive me, I'm just naming a few, but that would be an opportunity also when the students attend those coalition meetings with us to network, because there might be other branches of this work they might be more interested in. And this will be an opportunity to meet the people, again, as I said, on the ground that are actually doing these types of work.
Yeah, and we've already we've interviewed some of those partners, Lisa, didn't we? That she mentioned. Mm.
My memory is,
but
down there too.
Right. But all those that you called, we interviewed.
Oh, so it's not just me.
No, I'm just calling it stress brain now. It's just stress brain, the constant year. It's happening even to young people, even to our students. They're starting, I'm like, oh, it's happening to young brains. It's just stress brain. We all just need, in higher ed, we all need a little break.
I think everywhere.
And let me also give another point that, for a long time in this country, or for as long as the women's movement has been alive, and I'm talking about, I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s, and Gloria Steinem was leading our charge then. Oftentimes, you didn't see a lot of women of color or indigenous women in those organizations because they didn't have the luxury to be able to advocate. When you're holding down 2 jobs, and you have 2 children that you're taking care of, your single mother, you don't have the luxury of getting on a bus and going to Baton Rouge to your state legislator and talking to people that are supposed to be working for you. So hopefully part of my outreach is to make sure I am hearing what women in communities of color and indigenous women, I need to hear what their needs are so we can translate that when we go to these state houses, and perhaps maybe even broaden the base of who and what we look like in the state of Louisiana. Because too often you say women's health or women's movement and people just think, and I'll be candid, white women, but that face is changing for what we're doing across the nation. And I'm here waving the banner, come one, come all. We need everybody's help, And so I hope to make sure we're including all communities in this important conversation.
Okay, so I think everybody can see why, again, we interviewed many community partners. You can see why we said, you know, Robin would be really good for this. So those are the questions that I have. I thank you, just so I don't forget to, for being here today. Not that we're done, but just so I know I show my, you know, appreciation. But are there any questions from other attendees at this point?
Lisa, I'm sorry, I have to leave.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Bye, Kendra.
Okay.
Nice seeing you, Kendra. Hang in there. I'll see you at our next meeting.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. So any questions from other attendees at this point about the service learning process, about opportunities?
Yeah, sorry that it looks like our other presenters might not be able to make it, which is the life of being in an actual organization, right?
Yeah,
being an actual community partner, who knows? But one of my big objectives about wanting to support Lisa and Kendra in putting this together is, I think sometimes, you know, we talk about the nuts and bolts of service learning, but without having the schema or the seed of like, what could this be in my class? So I hope that maybe we can get the other people. Lisa's will share with the attendees the podcast. We'll give you the link straight to it, so you can hear from more people, because so much need out there, and so neat when you can actually make it blend with a class. It's such a powerful pedagogy. What it can't be is tacked on, right? A tacked on thing because you want to check a box, and then it doesn't really come together. It needs to be reciprocal. Jeremy Tuman, who was our service learning focus point person for a while, taught me this: reciprocal from the partner and the university, you know, meeting in the middle. And it sounds like there's some really good ideas. And this is what I was hoping for this, is just to spark ideas, because there's a lot of different organizations out there.
There are a lot. They yes. are flexible. They are looking for student involvement. And again, it was great to interview all these individuals, meet with all these individuals over the course of this year. I learned so much. I also learned just the variety of opportunities. And if you get together with a potential community partner and start brainstorming, then that excitement starts flowing with respect to what you can do with the class and what experience you can provide to your students, and how enriching that experience will be for everybody involved. So go ahead. Yeah.
And I want to say thank you, Elizabeth, because when I was employed with Planned Parenthood at the time, and then we started partnering and coming to do your class, it was great turnout. I remember the classes were full, like 30 to 38 students, great questions. We had show and tell on products, and just want to thank you for that. So again, another shameless plug. I am available for outreach on college campuses to make sure I can come and bring what Lift Louisiana is doing in Louisiana upfront and personal to your students as well. Mm-hmm. And also, which would coincide nicely with what we're trying to do with Power the Provider, this year we're planning that training for the fall. So it would be great if your students could get in on that. It will be a fall session this year.
Yeah, amazing things can happen over music.
Absolutely.
Do we still have the database of organizations that the Center for the Office of Student Leadership was keeping at one point? I know there's been some changes in that office, and Kendra just left, but I was wondering the status of that database.
Oh, I can definitely address that. In fact, that's what the database had been somewhat outdated for a bit. Right. One of the things that tends to happen is center directors sometimes come and go. So you lose touch and then you get back in touch. Your question actually speaks directly to what Kendra and I have been doing this academic year, is, really reaching out to people who we formerly had, who were on that, just call it the list. Right. But in that database, getting in contact, speaking with who we could, who we responded. And I lost track. That's why when Kendra said we talked to them, I'm like, we talked to like 40 people this year. I don't know who we talked to. I have it on an Excel file. I know that we had a lot of great conversations. We have the, videos we can go back to. So we have a database. We're thinking of it a little bit differently because I think the process now with the ability to talk to people with Zoom and really get into what their needs are, the variety of needs, have that meeting before we even hook them up with the potential faculty. So the question would be, yes, better, different.
Right.
Yeah. And that was our goal this year, was really, the Zoom was wonderful, was really to have conversations. We had, depending upon the person, at least a half an hour, sometimes an hour conversation with partners, just talking about these possibilities. And that's, everyone.
Yeah, because I remember there was quite a bit, even when I was there, on that list that was out of date,
Yep.
time, but it was a big list and it was kind of, unwieldy. Is it still housed in the OSL, is it Student Leadership and Service, OSLS?
It's in Student Affairs. Don't ask me what specific division. Okay. Elizabeth and I are kind of parsing that out. What is nice is Kendra has been a consistent figure that I've worked with. And I think she was working on service learning when you were in this position as well. So we have somebody who really knows the ropes with respect to the logistics. Again, she does I do the nice kind of abstract stuff, and the brainstorming stuff with classes, and it's really fun. She does the heavy lifting as far as tracking everything. So it's great to have that continuity. She knows what she's doing, which is awesome to have.
One more question then. Of the people you talked to this semester, what percentage would you say are open to or even already engaging in sort of live in-person engagement activities, or most of them still leaning towards virtual?
That's a great question. And that's one that we asked. So of course, for this semester, there were some face-to-face things, few and far between. Mm-hmm. My read and my memory is that many organizations want to move back to face-to-face, but they're approaching it with caution, like we all have to. And, with safety. So it's kind of like what Xavier as a whole is doing. We're going for that face-to-face, but we are ready to pivot.
Right.
And when I asked community partners kind of needs, I had them or asked them, and this is in the interviews, and this is on the podcast if you didn't have the chance to listen to it, but I had them think of moving forward to the fall, what might be going on. So there's a desire to move to face-to-face, but that's where we got to hear what you're doing and then get you with that organization, start with those organizations and see what's possible and see what the read of the given organization is. But it's there.
Good. Yeah, it got tough for me because I was mostly done tutoring projects. They'd all been, tutoring, and most of them had been after school. And that just became problematic because more screen time and more, it was already loaded up. It was not going to be effective. It was going to be, it was going to be counterproductive, really. And so we tried to get involved with during school hour targeted intervention kind of things that Crocker was doing, where they do small groups, and it's called risk intervention something. But it was during school hours that made it a little more manageable. But yeah, I can't wait to get back to so we can go into an elementary school again and start being effective, feeling more effective at least than being virtual. With trying
I forget who we talked to, but we were talking just to that point. Kids on Zoom all day, and then let's tutor them after school on Zoom, and it's just like, no, it's just too much.
For our students too. Same for Xavier students.
Yep.
I didn't want to ask them to do that. I really didn't.
Yeah. So yeah, for ideas and if for everybody, please spread that word that if you have an idea, bring us the class, bring us the idea. And I do have, there's still an official proposal, but basically it's boiled down to what's the class? Is it cross-listed? How many students do you expect? What are you trying to do? Let's go from there. And then, the syllabus will be something that I help you with. We've really tried to make it brainstorm, get it going.
Good.
I want to say that I have had the opportunity to work with some of the Xavier students who are involved in the service learning because my sister is Carolyn Barber Pierre. She is Vice President of Multicultural Affairs at Tulane University. And for years during MLK Week, she and Tulane students and Xavier students will go out and do community projects. And oftentimes I was there making sure they had their credentials and what bus to get on and where to go. So I'm kind of familiar with what you guys had been doing in the past with service learning, and I always had a great representation from the Xavier community.
Yeah, Robin, I agree. I think the amount of service that our students do is just outstanding. And so, and it's important to them, the students, it's important to them as part of the mission. That's why we want to harness that in the classroom and get more service learning done as well, because it goes so well with our mission. It goes so well with our mission. So that's Lisa and I this year we're just talking about this gave us a breath, gave us a, like you were saying, Jeremy, update those databases, make sure they're really fleshed out, and then we're hoping to really do some kickoff in the, before the fall, so that they can do it in the fall.
Yep. Okay, so that's what I have with questions. I don't know if anybody has anything else.
Yes, I have a question for Robin. Actually, for you too, Lisa. I'm new into this whole including service learning into my classes. So the question is about the power of the provider that you're planning to organize for the fall. So if I want to move, if I want to include this service learning opportunity for my students, do I go through you first, Lisa, and then you connect me to Robin? That's how it works?
Yes. So it would depend on the size of the class and the need of the program with respect to whether all of your students would actually partake in that specific program. So the idea would be to think of the project initially, what student learning outcomes you're achieving through the project, and then we start brainstorming on those connections with community partners. And again, depending upon the size of the class, it's likely to be more than one. So Robin, you can take like 50 people, right? She just said yes. I was kidding.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so never mind. Maybe it's just Robin and Louisiana. Never mind. But in general, so we'll see. But so it's sending, me the ideas, and then we review. And I also meet with Kendra because she really has that database. She has much better memory than I do because she's been working with it for so long of organizations within the community that might be a good match. So we also talk with her, and then ultimately we would have you and the community partners get together to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that everybody's benefiting, that it's really a project that is not one that, so we don't want it to be like, if I'm a prof, I come in and say, I want to do this, just find me an organization. It doesn't work that way. It's like, I want to do this. Okay, so what would that know with it? Let's meet with that organization, make sure we have that development together.
Great. Thank you so much.
And that's a great question. And Lisa, I also need to ask you, as I reach out to the different college campuses about how to make sure students get that service learning credit if they were to come and do some interning with Lift Louisiana? I need to know how all of that works so I can have all of that set up. So they make sure they got credit for the hours that they did for the power of the provider training. Should it be 1 day or 2 day or whatever? Yeah. So Lisa, you're the person that handles that?
Me and Kendra. So what would happen is, again, the prof comes to me first, but in part of that working out the project between professor and community partner, the hours are like, we'll have an idea of hours. The professor will have an idea of hours. But that's something that is negotiable, you know what I'm trying to say, depending upon the center, the needs of the center, depending upon the course, and getting credit. It would be the idea of, and this is where Kendra would come in. Once we have that agreement, Kendra actually does groundwork in also making sure that students are attending or participating and reports back. She's the mediator, the contact between the center and the professor. So an example would be if there is a concern that occurs during the semester with the student, maybe they're not showing up, maybe they're not being serious during the service learning, doing what they, are there to do. Kendra you would, report that to Kendra, and Kendra would report that to the instructor, and then the instructor would speak with that student, see what's going on there to rectify the situation. Okay? But yeah, there's going to be, with service learning, the idea is there's an agreed upon number of hours that students know that they should partake in. What we also do, and this is for everybody, what we like to have done is within the first couple weeks of classes, the center directors, if possible, come into the classes to talk about expectations. And again, the wonderful thing about learning more about Zoom is that we could do it via Zoom too, even if it's a physical class. There you go. You're on the screen. You're famous. Thank you very much. But to really give the students the idea, what we also do, and I'll have to remind the registrar about this because we did it like one time, but we have an SL designation on our course listings for courses that are service learning. So the idea is that when students register for the course, I'll put it to you this way, they should know that it's service learning. Now, do they know, because it's still kind of new, what that SL means? Maybe, maybe not. We'll get that norm really developed. But it's something that is emphasized from the get-go that if you sign up for this course, it is service learning. So what that means is you're going to be out partaking in the community.
And one thing I would add to that, Lisa, good, I made a note to mention that designation, but one thing I would add to that is if anybody here is interested in doing this, even like just, starting it in the fall, like putting your foot in and just seeing how this goes in the fall, fall schedule's already out. Obviously, you can't do your SL designation now, but I would recommend then you email your class. You can email them through EAB. And I would email your class and just say, hey, just, heads up, I'm excited to have you in here. And this is going to be a service learning class, and we're going to be doing work in the community. And the reason why I say that is I just think it's really nice for students to know that in advance. I think it helps you get more buy-in from the students. And any students who would be really resistant to that for whatever reason, and we never know, they can then opt out, change the schedule, and then you won't have that point of tension throughout the semester, or the community partner had that point of tension. But most students really resonate and they really like it. It's a great, our students they're trying to get to the next level, right? And this is a way to do it. So I think my experience, the students have always really, it's gone well as long as the community partnership has gone well. And, but I do think shooting them an email, since if you're going to do it in the fall, since it isn't designated, it would be really beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would still try and get that designation on there, but it's like an after the fact thing. So it might be like, oh, wait, what? Didn't know. So yes, the email, very good point. Okay. So any other questions?
Robin, could I reach out to you to possibly come speak to one of my classes this summer? I'm teaching law, society, and politics. I think your insight might be good if I'm connecting some of law, politics to actual real world societal ongoing. So hopefully we can, you give us the green light to be able to reach out to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was thinking, I was a poli-sci major, and when I was in college in Atlanta, I went to Spelman, and I remember going to the Atlanta state capitol, downtown, and actually, being able to talk to legislators and see what they're working on and stuff like that. And it was just amazing, even to tour the Capitol, find out how a bill is written and all the steps it goes through. So, absolutely. Whenever you want me to, just let me know, put it on my calendar and be more than happy to help educate.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And
you're welcome.
With your permission, Robin, I'll put your email in chat. Is it okay if I put your email in chat?
Barber at liftlouisiana.org. Yeah, Barber at liftlouisiana.org. There you go.
All right.
And Robin, I haven't had you in a while because I haven't taught that class in a while. That class got taken by another great professor. She's doing an awesome job, but I haven't taught it. Last time I taught it, you were with me.
Okay. Well, Elizabeth, and then I also spoke to, what's her name? Dr. Francois. There was another class we also did outreach to and presentations to besides yours. I want to say, I can't remember her name. That I was with Planned Parenthood, 6-7 years ago? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a
while.
while.
I know that we came on a quarterly basis.
That's cool.
All right. So any closing questions, last things that pop up? Just want to make sure. Okay. So with your permission, Elizabeth, I feel like I'm MC. Haha, I got the power. Elizabeth will just unmute herself and take over in a second. Robin, again, thank you so much for being here. Again, we knew you kind of rose and we're like, we need that person. A great organization, obviously, in and of itself, a great example of there's so many opportunities out there and flexibility of our community partners. Okay.
And thanks, Lisa, for getting this together.
And as I said, we're always looking for, new faces, fresh ideas, because we, the menopause militia, are looking to pass this torch eventually to some young, fresh faces, to some very young, fresh faces. So here's our opportunity.
Just as I'm fanning myself. Okay, everybody, thank y'all so much. She's right as I'm doing this. Y'all, thank you so much for coming today. I know it's the last weeks of class and it's late in the afternoon, so I appreciate you so much. I hope we take these ideas and they move forward and we do something with them. Many thanks to Lisa for putting this together and all the work she has done and all the work Kendra has done. And I put in the chat that we will send you a follow-up email with the at least they asked for the link to the database, and then we'll also do the podcast. All right, so be on the lookout for that and the evaluation. We'll do an evaluation. Okay. Be on the lookout for that. And thanks, everybody. Go have an evening. Bye. Thanks, Robin. Nice seeing you again.
Thank you.
See ya.